All right. That looks interesting. We're gonna go with this.
Well, that was a movie.
Hello and welcome back to Simon's Rants. I'm Simon, and today I'm giving my first thoughts on Joker 2. It's not really called that, it's called Joker something. Folie did do something. I don't know. I'm trying to avoid looking stupid here. It's obviously a sequel to Joker, which was, both of them were written and directed by Todd Phillips, and this one's starring Joaquin Phoenix. Harley Quinn is played by Lady Gaga, and it's also got Brendan Gleeson in it, which was a fun surprise. I love him, didn't know he was going to be in it, probably should have, but I avoid trailers and stuff like that typically. And also a fun little cameo by Tim Dillon, also didn't know he was going to be in this. Doesn't tell any jokes or anything, but always good to see Tim Dillon. Yeah, so elephant in the room, everybody's already saying this movie sucks. That's kind of just been the thing on Twitter, on IMDb. It's got a sub 6 rating. It's 5 point something right now. It's got a 51% on Metacritic. People are, well, okay, I mean, the first one had a really bad rating on Metacritic too. Critics didn't like either of these, so it's more of the fan reaction being surprising than the critics not liking it. The critics not liking it isn't shocking at all, but the average person isn't liking it either. And so I went in with that in mind, unfortunately. Tried to avoid that stuff, like I said, but you can't always avoid it, especially if you're on Twitter. You just see people in an uproar. But yeah, so what did I think? I don't get why everybody hates it. I understand why people wouldn't love it already automatically. If you didn't know this, it's a musical, because when they asked Todd Phillips to make a sequel, he kind of trolled them, essentially, and I already saw people comparing it to The Matrix 4, and it's not that. I don't think he went out of his way to make a bad movie on purpose, but he said, oh, you want me to make a sequel that I don't want to make? All right, let's see how out there I can go with it. And so, like, originally he pitched to them Joker the musical, and they were like, we don't want that. Do you have any other ideas? And he said, fine, we can do Joker on the Moon if you really don't want to do Joker the musical. And they said, all right, fine, we'll do the musical. So he was trolling the studio, he's kind of trolling the audience in a way, and part of that really has to do with there didn't need to be, and there was no real reason to have a sequel. It's kind of like having a sequel to American Psycho or like Fight Club or something like that, where the whole point of the first one, which of course in all of these movies is lost on a large chunk of the audience, unfortunately, is that the main character is insane. He's not meant to be idolized. He's not meant to be liked. He's not even really meant to be felt sorry for necessarily. And this one a little bit more so than something like American Psycho. He's meant to be a cautionary tale. The whole first Joker movie is about how the system is letting down the people, because the system, instead of trying to help these people, is just demonizing them and then turning them into villains. And then people see that, think of them as heroes, begin worshiping them, and then following after this idealized version of them. When he's just somebody insane, he's made into this sort of anti-hero character that people idolize. So similarly, the second one follows that trend of now he's kind of a martyr because he murdered these people, and so he got put in I guess Arkham Asylum. They don't say it's Arkham, I don't think, but essentially Arkham Asylum. And so now there's apparently been a TV movie made about him, and people, including this girl Harley, look up to him as this sort of hero. And it's not a bad idea on paper, but it felt really empty in a lot of ways. And I think it really just came back down to there didn't need to be a sequel. We don't typically get sequels to movies like this for a reason. You kind of already said everything you had to say. So I'm not saying this is a bad movie. In fact, it was a very well-made movie. There just wasn't as much to do there. You know, the first one, granted, the first one is essentially mainly the King of Comedy, just retold slightly differently, but it had an interesting way of saying it. Like, you know, you weren't ever really sure what was happening in his imagination versus reality, and there was a fun thing that they did with that. And this one, they try to do that a little bit, but the cat's already out of the bag. How many how many animals can I mention during this review? The cat's already out of the bag, and so it's like you already know that you can't trust everything that he's saying or that the narrator is saying. So it's like you can't really believe, like, and all of, obviously when they go into song numbers and stuff, you're like, well, this isn't literal. This is in their imagination. You knew that from the trailer. You knew that from the announcement of the movie that it's not going to be literal. So there was just less to do with it. And when you say something like, oh, it's going to be a musical, you're expecting something really big and ridiculous and over the top. And that got me excited because it's like, okay, you can only go bigger. If you pull back, it's pointless. There's nothing left to do. And this movie, it really felt like they pulled back a little bit, ironically, and that they didn't have enough ideas, because there were clearly some ideas in there that were really, really good. I really did like the idea of the musical. I did really like the concept of there being like a court case about him. Joaquin Phoenix's performance in this movie is fantastic. There's so much to love about this movie, but there just wasn't enough there to carry the whole movie for the runtime, which was like 2+ hours. It's like there just wasn't enough there. So I kind of wish that they had reworked the script, rewritten the script a few more times, gotten some more stuff in there, more plot in there, because does it deserve the 5s it's getting? Absolutely not. I think people are insane for thinking it's a terrible movie. I just think that there should have been more in there, because I would still give it between a 6 and a 6.5, somewhere in there. I want to say 7 because I enjoyed it, but like I said, it kind of feels pointless, so I can't give it a 7, honestly. But it's not a bad movie. It's just not a great movie. The first one wasn't great either, but it was very good in my opinion. This one is just, it feels, like I said, it kind of feels pointless. And it's still a very well-made movie, very well acted. Like I said, Joaquin Phoenix is great. I also thought that Lady Gaga was really good. Brendan Gleeson's always great. I thought all of the side characters were very good. It's all around a well-made movie with an interesting idea, just not enough of an idea. And I wish that we could have gotten more from it. Yeah. I think the people that hate it are, one, the critics that already would have hated it to begin with, already hated the first one. But two, I think it's added in another group of people that idolized the character of the first one, kind of like, you know, that happens all the time with American Psycho and like Fight Club and stuff, where you think of these guys as like heroes in a way, because people just, you know, young people watch movies and completely miss the commentary, misinterpret what's trying to be said, and so go, oh yeah, this guy is somebody to look up to. And this movie doesn't allow the audience to do that anymore. It removes that. So I think probably it lost a large part of its fan base because of that, because that's the only place you can go with this story, is to show the audience that, yeah, you're stupid. If you thought this before, you're stupid. But if you didn't think that, you're not getting any new information. So it's like, if you took the plot for what it was supposed to be, the commentary for what it was supposed to be the first time, you're not getting anything new or interesting out of the commentary at that point. At least I didn't. And so I think you distanced a large group of the fan base, because unfortunately a lot of people that were fans of the first one were fans of it because they were stupid and didn't get it, which is amazing how you could not get that. Because I guess with these kind of characters, you know, they've got a hint of truth in what they're saying, where it's like, yeah, you know, the system is bad and we do need change. And it's like, okay, but he's also a psychopathic killer. We're not supposed to look up to psychopathic killers, even if they make somewhat of a good point about some things. So yeah, I think probably that's the main reason that it's got such a low rating in comparison. I think also they probably distanced some people with the musical concept, you know, by estranging their audience through adding in song numbers. That it's like, nobody really wanted that. That's a weird thing to do, but the whole reason they did it was weird. And I don't think the audience that liked the first one was prepared for weird. It's a kind of a out there idea. I don't want to say artsy, but it's respecting the audience to be willing to accept odd and strange things and use their brain. And I don't think the majority of people that liked the first Joker are that kind of audience. No offense to you if you liked the first one, but this is a weird, almost artsy kind of take on this idea, and it's going to confuse and baffle a lot of the audience that's not ready to think outside the box with the movie like that. I was prepared for something like that and I was still disappointed though. So I think it is just generally not as good of a movie as the first one was, and I think they could have done a lot more with it. So that's where I'm like, I'm still giving a positive rating of the 6 to 6.5 there, but it could have been better, but it certainly wasn't as bad as everybody's acting like it is. You know, according to Twitter, it's one of the worst movies ever made. Like I said, people are reacting like it's The Matrix 4, or it's like it's bordering on so bad it's good. I'm like, it's nowhere close to that. I don't know how you can come away with that opinion. It's just, I don't know. I really genuinely don't know how you could have that opinion after seeing it. So, yeah, I guess I'll get into spoilers for a little bit, not for a whole long time, but there's a couple of things I wanted to talk about. But yeah, overall, that's my opinion. It's fine, and it's worth checking out, I guess, but it really just, it feels ultimately kind of pointless and not worth doing. But, I mean, could have been a lot worse, apparently. It really is terrible, according to all these people. I don't see that. But, yeah, that's what I think. What did you think, though? If you've seen it, let me know in the comments below, and of course, don't forget to like, share, and if you're new here, subscribe. Thanks, guys. Bye. So, spoilers. I think the most interesting thing about this movie was the introduction of seemingly the Joker, or Heath Ledger's Joker, a reference to that, because so ultimately the Joker, Joaquin Phoenix, he's in court defending himself. They're going with this case that he and the Joker, like Arthur Fleck and the Joker, are two different personalities in the same person, which is not true, but they're trying to use that as an insanity plea in this case. And then eventually he comes out and admits, there is no Joker. That's not some sort of anti-hero character or whatever. It's just me. I just killed people because I felt like shit, and I'm sorry I did it. I regret doing it. Shouldn't have done it. So his ravenous fan base, a lot of them just drop him, including Harley Quinn, no longer want anything to do with him. And there's a lot of people in the insane asylum that also really looked up to him as a hero, and now they're all disappointed and all hate him, or are at least upset with him. And so one of them ends up murdering him with a knife, stabbing him a bunch of times. And then as we zoom in slowly on Joaquin Phoenix dying, the guy that just stabbed him in the background with the knife cuts a smile onto his face and starts laughing. And I'm like, that has to be a Heath Ledger Joker reference, because no other version of Joker, at least in film, has ever had a cut mouth like that. I mean, there have been comics and similar things in the TV show and stuff, but that's a very clear, to me at least, unless I'm completely missing it, reference to Heath Ledger's Joker. So I was like, that's interesting, because, you know, there was so much debate of it. Like, is he the Joker, or is he just the guy that inspires the Joker? I feel like that was the confirmation that we probably already all should have known from the first one, that he is not the Joker, he's just the inspiration for the Joker. Which I know there's a lot of people complaining about this movie being, and the first one too, being completely comic inaccurate, and it's like, okay, and what's your point? This never was the point. We've got plenty of Jokers that are in, you know, movies. We've got Jack Nicholson, we've got Heath Ledger, we unfortunately have Jared Leto. We have a lot of different versions to pick from that are all varying levels of comic accurate. In fact, none of them are truly genuinely comic accurate. They're all wrong for different reasons, and that's fine. It's about taking characters and doing interpretations with them. You can argue why the Joker for this, but it's like, it was to just simply make a point and tell a story, and I'm fine with that. Is Harley Quinn anything like Harley Quinn? Not really. Is the Joker anything like Joker? Not really, but that's fine. It's a separate story. It doesn't have to be comic accurate to be a good movie. Like I said, I still am a fan of the first one. I think the first one, even after the disappointing realization that it is just the king of comedy, is still a good movie. I think they took that story and did something good and interesting with it. In fact, I think they did some things better than the king of comedy did. I think the King of Comedy is probably overall a better movie, but it's you know, they did some good things that weren't in the King of Comedy. But anyway, one other spoiler I can talk about was interesting to me is so much of this movie I was trying to figure out what is actually happening versus all in his head, and I kind of figured from the beginning, even from seeing the trailer, that Harley Quinn wasn't actually a real person. It was just his imagination the whole time, and I think they want you to believe that, and then halfway through the movie his lawyer mentions her, because up until that point nobody was actually referencing her, and so I was like, nobody's saying her name, maybe she's not real. And then finally they do, and then it becomes obvious that she is a real person, and she's just another one of the fanatics following him around. But then that calls into question some of the weird things that happen, because one of the points that I was like, this has to be fake, is he's put in like solitary confinement, and then he wakes up and she's in his cell, and he's like, what are you doing here? And she's like, one of the guards let me in. I'm like, oh yeah, that would never happen. Apparently it did, or maybe it didn't. I still don't know, because like, just because she is a real person doesn't mean their entire every interaction they have really happened, because so much of their interactions is, you know, the musical bits, which are fake for the most part. They do actually sing out loud, but they're not, you know, they're at one point doing like a Sonny and Cher thing. That's not really happening. So I wonder if the jail cell was that too. I don't know, because that was a weird thing to put in there if it was really what happened, you know. Like, it reminded me of when I watched the first one. There's an interaction with his neighbor that I was like, oh, that's such bad writing. And then you find out, oh, it didn't really happen. You're like, okay, thank God, you know, that redeemed it. And so I was kind of thinking that was going to happen the same time in this. And then they never really said whether or not that actually happened. They didn't confirm or deny it. So I don't know. And maybe that's because, you know, they knew how obvious a lot of it would be, so they were trying to make some things less obvious, some things to pick up on a later date. I don't know. On a first watch, this didn't seem nearly as deep as the other one, where there was so many things, you know, in the first one that there was that, you know, you would catch on a second and third watch, that made it so much more interesting, and how it was filmed, how it was edited, little quirky writing things. So maybe this will get better on a second or third watch. I don't know. It didn't seem like those moments were in there, but maybe I just missed them. I haven't seen them yet. I don't know. So overall, it didn't seem, like I said, it didn't seem necessary. This movie probably shouldn't have existed, but it was well made enough that it was fine. I'm not mad about it existing now. I think there was a lot of talent involved. I will say still, though, that it's just not as good as the first one. So you may be disappointed by it, but you may also enjoy it. There was parts that made me laugh. There was parts that were interesting plot-wise. There was, like I said, some really good ideas in there. I just think that it was not enough for a full runtime. So that's what I had to think. Like I said, keeping the spoilers kind of short. There's not a whole lot to say there. I guess the one other thing you could say was, so Harvey Dent is the lawyer going against him, and then a bomb goes off and you see that half of his face is cut up, and I was like, oh, that's fun. So there's a lot of like little things like that. Like I said, you know, the Joker after that, or the guy cutting his face. Who knows? Yeah, not a whole lot really to talk about other than that. It is what it is. It didn't seem as deep, like I said, as the first one, or as clever. It seemed a lot more surface level and, you know, a little more empty, which, like I said, maybe it will get better. Maybe my opinion will change on a rewatch. But I'm also not clamoring for a rewatch either. So, not as bad as everybody's saying it is. I think people are really overreacting, but it's also, it's clearly not as good as the first one. So, it's fine. It's not a top 10 movie of the year or anything, but it was fine. I still think plenty of people should enjoy it if they don't react to the hype so much. But yeah, like I said, that's what I think. What do you guys think, though? Let me know in the comments below if whatever. I messed up the line. Bye, guys.